Welcome to the Source of Synergy and the Evolutionary Leaders panel on this very exciting topic. This is really about the contact and consciousness, evolution and synergy circle. Diane Williams will be talking more about this. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I just wrote this book called Making Contact, which has generated a lot of talk and maybe was the foundation for forming this group. Co-hosting with Desiree Hurtak, who is a founder of the Academy for Future Science, part of the international NGO organization at the UN. Her and JJ Hurtak were scientific consultants for Cindy Sheldon's best-selling book on alien encounters called The Doomsday Conspiracy. I don't think we have to do the doomsday stuff, but they are world leaders, spiritual leaders. They've just shared a panel with Michio Kaku, and me, Desiree, and JJ have just been speaking for the last 2 months around the country on what this idea of making contact is all about. So Desiree, come on, and then I want to go over just what I hope we can cover in this panel discussion, because we had a very lively discussion yesterday, just laid the groundwork for today. So Desiree, do you want to say anything?
Well, I'm excited about Alan's new book and also this critical week where the government is supposed to be able to release something on June 25th, talking about extraterrestrial contact. So we'll see what they're going to say. We're not in expectation too much about this. But I'd like to move on because many of the people, if I can say all of the people here, are part of a synergy circle. So can we turn this over to Diane first?
Wait, but Diane's going to make a statement. I just want to kind of go over what I'd like to focus on in this talk, because there's so many moving parts here. Or Diane, do you want to speak first and then we'll go into your response, because everyone's going to have
it's up to you. However.
Okay, let me just lay out the groundwork as I see it. Of course, people have prepared statements and can do whatever they want. But the question that I posed was how do each of us tell the story of ET contact? I call this a narrative. How do we incorporate this into our own understanding about the nature of reality? And when I say narratives, it's like there's so many different components to this story. What does the government make of this? What is the media narrative? What is the science? How does science start to deal with this phenomena? How do we tell a new story about who we are in the cosmos? And so there's that, the government's spin on it and what they want people to know. And that's what I call their kind of narrative mix. And then all these different aspects of this phenomena that seems to be at our doorstep. Even my own personal narrative is like, and I'll just tell you my personal feeling, this is like a science fiction movie. It's like suddenly the aliens have landed. And that's, I feel, a distortion of my own cultural environment, because what's really happening is something I think we don't know. And this is just my belief, and I think this discussion is welcoming other people's beliefs, because I think it is all belief. Even like what some people say, even I think Kurt said yesterday, the superorganism. Yes, that is a strong possibility, but again, that is another way of explaining this. So I think all of us can sort of talk about how do we explain this to ourselves? How do we put this in a larger picture, but also keep the idea that this is ongoing. Like, let's not, my suggestion is, let's not say it's this. Let's not even say this is aliens, although it could be. This could be so many different things that's why I really wanted to have this discussion, to throw out the possibilities of everything we can conceive of, and then let's bring it together and see what we can make of what all these different various opinions. Does that sound good, Desiree?
Perfect. But I want to say the format for this day is going to be everyone who's the main panelists are going to be talking. I know we said 3 minutes. If we can take it down to 2, it'll give everyone more time. And Alan is just excellent at really organizing the panel so that we can all do a discussion. And it really comes out when there's a discussion on this, you get more and more ideas, things that you never thought of or things that you need to add in terms of your opinion. So let's try to get the introductions finished, and then we'll move into the panel section where everyone is really talking.
And I just want to throw out for the discussion idea, it's like, let go of what you wanted to say before the discussion. I mean, you can make an initial statement, but let's pick up on threads, let's build something. So if someone says something and it stimulates another idea, add to that instead of trying to take it off in another direction. Or you can, but kind of keep a continuity of thought so we can. This is what Ron and Victoria do in their Vistar method, which is a great way to hold a discussion. There's a field we want to build, a field of knowledge based on our collective awareness. And that's what I feel a good discussion involves. So with all that prerequisite, I'm going to introduce Diane Williams, the founder of the Source of Synergy, and she has a lot to say about who we are and where we're going with this. And thank you all for watching online.
Thank you so much, Alan. And can one of you admit people as they come into the room? Because
Yes,
I've been doing that while I say a couple words. Thank you so much. And many thanks to you, Desiree, JJ, everyone that's done so many wonderful things on this subject. I know your book is out. Everybody should get it. It's an amazing book. I just finished it.
Is this too obnoxious putting it up on the screen? Is that okay?
No, it's great promotion for
Okay.
you.
All right.
So anyway, on behalf of the Source of Synergy Foundation, I'd like to welcome everyone, including those watching on the various social media platforms, that our World Unity Week Evolutionary Leaders Source of Synergy Room is hosting. And thank you all for joining us today as we go on this collective exploration into new realities.
Yes.
And we will be having special programs all week in this room to honor unity. You can find them on evolutionaryleaders.net/World Unity Week. And all of them will be on this Zoom link that you just tuned in today. And if you missed any of them, you should be able to view them, at least some of the recordings, I don't know if all, on our Evolutionary Leaders or the World Unity Week Facebook pages. So I hope they'll be there soon. So I wanted to just start my brief presentation by sharing a bit about the mission of the Source of Synergy Foundation and why we feel conversations like today are really essential to the next step of our evolutionary journey. We are very committed to supporting conscious evolution through crafting and creating opportunities for synergistic engagement so that collectively we can more deeply embody our oneness, especially now when the worldview of Earthlings is being stretched and expanded rapidly. And I know many of us believe that the transition of humanity back into a full state of conscious oneness where we all come from can be accelerated by our openness to meeting, communicating, and collaborating with other members of our cosmic family and those in subtle realms that transcend the material cosmos. So this is a huge defining moment in our history. And the synergy that can be created by this integrated union has great potential to catalyze the powerful forces of love and co-creation into full manifestation. The source that we're all part of is love, the nature of our highest reality. And love is the force that renders us all equal, regardless of where we come from or what we look like. And we often hear about benevolent and malevolent beings, which could be considered a good versus bad narrative. And that is really being put out there. But even on Earth, we can slip out of our natural states at times, but our essence is source, and we can return to that loving state at any moment. And lately, we have been hearing narratives in the mainstream media based on fear. But if we believe that our thoughts and fears create our reality, we can create the antidote of that narrative. And it's essential, especially now that people that have positive experiences of contact share their truth as widely as possible, including in the mainstream media, so uplifting and inspiring narratives are shared. Mm-hmm. And while accounts of seeing UFOs are generally positive, there are stories of people that have had frightening abductions by other beings, which are also important to share. But I think what is fascinating but not surprising is that when people that have had these abductions worked at overcoming their fear and began to send the beings loving energy during these encounters, they could feel the experience move to a higher vibration. And after their experience, their lives shifted in positive transformational ways, including having a heightened sense of spirituality, more concern about the environment, increased multidimensional abilities, having more clarity about their purpose on Earth, and a more expanded notion of reality. So this is a true testament to the power of love. And there was an interesting study I wanted to share, conducted by psychologists Douglas Bancock and Shui Lee, I think her name was, to assess people's reactions about the likelihood that extraterrestrials would be malevolent. And it is not surprising that they found that people who view the world as a hostile place are more likely to think of extraterrestrials as being hostile. So I think our role as evolutionary beings is to support others to remember who they truly are, multidimensional beings of cosmic origin that know that love is the matrix of all creation, and that our world and the greater cosmos is loving, safe, and expansive. Because our hearts are the portals that lift us to other dimensions so that we can meet others in different locations and realms of existence. We can enter these portals through heart-based coherence techniques, where we can tap into the heart's intelligence, and many other ways, such as entering a gamma brain state, through encounters like a UFO exciting, or through meditation. All these experiences create a direct link with source, and thus the matrix of all life. And just in closing, just wanted to say, in this heightened awareness and expansiveness, we become more intuitive and telepathic. We receive more insights, information, and ideas, and we're able to more deeply tap into our innate powers to heal and harmonize. And we also begin to have greater coherence and closer relationships with others, including becoming co-creators with our partners in other locations and realms. And being receptive to them will accelerate the alchemical process of making visible what was once invisible to many. And then we will begin to walk through other dimensions and realities with ease, including tapping into mediums of communication like telepathy and other soon to be discovered ways that all parties are capable of engaging in together. So this is all part of the shift that is taking place now, because of the expansion to a cosmic worldview through our intention to increase cosmic love and connection through contact with others in the greater consciousness field. And I do have complete confidence that together we can and will usher in the next stage of our collective evolution, so that we can return to the consciousness of oneness and the matrix of creation, which is love. So it's a true blessing to be on this journey with all of you. Thank you so much for your service to this evolution.
That is a beautiful statement, Diane. That really says it all. And that should be part of our mission statement, because I think you've really summed up a possible narrative that will take us into a new time, into a new collective awareness. So that was excellent. I could not have said it better myself, but I think you really summed up. But let's go on, and I really appreciate that. And I want to call on Dr. J.J. Hurtak, who doesn't have all day to be here with us, but is one of the longest time investigators into this phenomena. JJ and Elisabeth Sitouris were at really one of the first UFO meetings, ET meetings, and they have held the torch for this progressive movement that has brought us right here to the threshold of a new world that we are now about to enter, a new possibility, a new phase of human civilization as we meet the cosmic other. So there's no one better qualified to lay out that narrative than Dr. J.J. Hurtak, author of The Keys of Enoch, founder of the Academy for Future Science, along with Desiree. So please, J.J.
Thank you, Alan. As some of you know, I have a background as a social scientist, cosmologist. I've also worked with the indigenous groups throughout the world. And many years ago, I had the rare opportunity to present what we will call the smoking gun in July of 1979, 42 years ago. As illustrated in my book, Extraterrestrial Retrievals, I was the first to present the actual pictures of extraterrestrial specimens in Mexico City to a world audience. This was filmed, was well documented. This led also to my cooperation behind the scenes with several astronauts, one of which was Gordy Cooper, who in his book, Leap of Faith, tells us that President Truman in April of 1950 said, "I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not constructed by any party on Earth," end of quote. So this sets the stage for looking at the science behind the science, the true reality behind science fiction that is being debated in this conversation, of course, is going to continue. So we're going to make available this book for those of you who are interested to look at actual case studies that I've been involved with in field research that clearly we are engaged with a number of cosmic civilizations, some of which follow a cosmic law of hands-off. Others have violated this in terms of human subjects being subjected to sexual experimentations. You have both sides of the story. We need to find a middle ground, and that's why we're all together to look at the positive engagement that's ahead of us as a human civilization. This is the greatest moment in human history, and we must be positive, and we must seek the higher ground, realizing that we need a new science of consciousness to put the pieces together.
Yes, and I'll just add, in addition to that, there are those that have watched us for thousands of years that are here now because they see things taking place on the planet. They see the fact that the planet itself, Mother Gaia, is not doing well. They see our use of technology, and so they are concerned. They're trying to give us information, but they're not willing to do it for us. And I think that that's one of the key factors. And they are doing a lot of this out of love and really familial getting together because we are part of them and they're part of us.
We've documented 82 extraterrestrial races counting, and this will be a subject of a new presentation in the coming year. The problem is the complexity of the universe has caught our government officials sort of off balance, and they do not, in my opinion, have a logical roadmap to put the pieces of multiple levels of intelligence together, because we have, in addition to the extraterrestrials, what some call the extracelestials, those who are beyond physical embodiment. I think the best model for this is the indigenous tree of life with the many branches of the cosmic frontier. We are being one of many branches of cosmic intelligence. So this requires a space law, and to that end, I've worked behind the scenes in publishing several papers on space law, including this entitled Negotiating with Other Worlds, where we need the best experts at the United Nations and from various traditions, particularly the indigenous, to come to the foreground, who've been in contact, paraphysically speaking, with the cosmic others, to lay out a humanistic, ecumenical, and cosmic roadmap that we can all accept out of the power of our heart and dedication to the human race.
But just going back a little bit to what Diane Williams has said, basically we feel we are in a phase of great awakening, and that great awakening is happening to many people all over the world. And really it's this transition phase of us meeting our cosmic brothers and sisters that we're starting to initiate from our end right now.
Simplify, we are going from humankind to space kind. This is the time of graduation.
So, Jay,
great opportunity to receive the passport to the cosmos.
You're not going to be with us for the bigger discussion. How do you think each of us should proceed in this time of awakening?
I feel it's important that we assert ourselves as a collective team, putting all cards on the table, recognizing all possibilities, and really working with the consensus of those who are really working with human values in a larger context of our humanity joining a cosmic civilization as cosmic citizens. I think this is the most important moment, literally, for the last 2,000 years of realizing that what the indigenous had to go through with the Europeans, we may have to go through in terms of taking a higher path and using a good selective factor of logic, but operating from a spiritual humility of our heart to find a relationship with those who respect our deep values. We need a global ethic, but more importantly, we need leadership from those of us who've been on the front lines, who put together information that's inconvertible with the higher values. And this is the whole strategy of an integrated program. I hope we can have a Charter of Nations on the level of a public movement where we can have public diplomacy that will go around whatever roadblocks we face on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Doctors Hurtak. That's a good foundation, because I think a public forum like this with people from many different fields, politics, media, science, academia is what we need to progress forward. So I'm going to call on Elisabeth Sitouris, who's also been a long time researcher, investigator, and thinker on the subject. We need thinkers like JJ and Elisabeth, Desiree, Oscar, all these people to look at this in terms of our evolutionary awareness. So please, Elisabeth, jump in and tell us what you feel.
Aloha, Alan, and thank you, JJ, to build on the concept of cosmology here as a scientist. I'm very interested in the fact that there are so many different sciences in the world, and how can we unify the different perspectives? Before I talk about my metaphor there, I just want to say, if we could think of this as a dialogue rather than a discussion. Discussion is where you pick things apart. Right. Dialogue is from the beautiful Greek word dialogos, meaning through the word you reach harmony, not necessarily agreement. Can be diverse, but harmoniously talk about this in the spirit of love that Diane's talking about.
Thank you for that clarification. Excellent.
So that said, my favorite metaphor for a worldview, we're talking about cosmology is the biggest worldview, right? Worldviews are all the way down from local to cosmic. The metaphor of a keyboard allows for the universe to be made of vibrations, which virtually all scientists seem to agree around the world, from indigenous sciences to all of the Western and the Vedic and the Taoist ones. So think of a keyboard is a sequence of vibrations. If you see matter in the low keys and then energy in the mid-range keys, and Einstein came along showing us matter is energy, energy is matter, so we can transpose the music up and down that keyboard, where Western science starts from that material end. But then we run out into the finer aspects of energy, which get you to mind and consciousness. And so Western science doesn't have good access to that upper end of the keyboard, while the quantum scientists had to turn to Vedic science, which starts at the other end in consciousness and derives the material world by slowing down the vibrations. Why is this relevant to the question of ETs? Because they play the whole keyboard, because they can move up and down the keyboard, which is why you can disappear a physical UFO and it can be moved into the high end of the non-physical. It literally becomes non-physically. And of course, they steer their ships through the mind. So it's all about communion with matter, with each other. And when we get to where we can talk the same way to ETs as we would to trees and to microbes and to all of nature, is always in communion, able to know what's going on at all levels and through all species and beings, that's our best way is listen. I was in the Amazon with a beautiful long-haired Amazon Indian years ago saying, can you teach me to talk with the plants and animals? This is a long time ago. And he said, shut up, Elisabeth, and listen. This conversation has been going on as long as there's been a forest. It's not yours to initiate the dialogue. It's yours to hear it, tune in, and become part of it. So that's basically what I'd like to say about dialogue, communion, and a keyboard of vibrations.
No, that is excellent and really sets the groundwork for looking at these other ways of knowing. My favorite quote that I put in this book was by John Mack: if we're going to understand this phenomena, we need other ways of knowing outside the linear, mechanistic, Western Newtonian point of view. So let's turn to Oscar. Miro Quesada, who looks at this whole situation from an indigenous point of view. Of course, he's been trained in Western understanding as well, so he's a bridge between the worlds. And I think we can learn a lot from this other way of knowing. So thanks, Oscar, for being here.
Certainly. And thank you all for showing up, speaking your hearts, unencumbered by fear, doubt, insecurity, or basic unknowing, because it's through our communion, as Elisabeth has said, with great originating mystery that everything is revealed. So it gives me a very deep, optimistic feeling that we are moving in the right direction. For much of our efforts right now, as you well know, Alan, are focused on outer space exploration, and our indigenous peoples, our First Nations peoples, are into inner space exploration. And so when we focus our attention just on outer space, of course, we're going to find a diverse amount of living forms that populate an infinite amount of worlds that are out there. I mean, statistically speaking, it's a no-brainer. Yet those who explore inner space should expect to encounter a reality in which everything found is realized as a divine expression of oneself. So my approach to this phenomena in general is that it's all within. And through that awareness, therefore, we can basically manage and give form and also give a communication that is going to be relevant to that which could be outside of us. We need a post-material and post-positivistic scientific vision at this point. The current approach is not going to work. There's too many realities that lie beyond the register of our five senses or their technological extensions. So therefore, what I could bring to the table here is simply my own experience as a member of the contactee group in Peru called the Rama Mission that was founded by Sixto Paz Wells. And my experiences through that community, which is the only community that has scheduled sightings that are received in terms of psychographic communication telepathically by what we call antennas that are the receivers of this. And then we go to certain areas, mostly south of Lima, in a place called Chilca, it's a desert there, and have actual encounters with our physical starcraft. Yet all of that is already happening within ourselves before that. So therefore, what we're coming into having a third dimensional experience with is really a projection of what we have already managed to realize within ourselves. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, it's pretty dramatic and remarkable to see someone like Sixto walk through a zendra, which is a 30-foot high semicircle in the middle of the desert that is maybe 2 inches thin and on the side, but a person walks in there and disappears, comes back with a beard growth of about a week, totally discombobulated. It does something to your notion of reality, of course. So I've had these experiences, as well as been deeply honored to have my own maestro, my mentor in Kamasca curanderismo, the northern coastal shamanic tradition, that in his teachings included much about the history of contact with our star relatives in those regions of Peru, to the fact that there's been times that in the middle of a mesada, of a healing seance, he would have people go outside and say hello to the craft that were hovering above us. Mm-hmm. And these are things that certain individuals that have developed an alignment with a much broader sense of what it means to be a cosmic human can, in a positive way, in a benevolent way, in a manner that is life-affirming and love-promoting, be able to create fields of receptivity and call upon the assistance of our star relatives in certain times that are needed. And this is happening collectively, as you well know, Alan.
Mhm.
So these are my thoughts, and thank you for giving me the space to speak.
Well, I think that indigenous perspective gives rounds out the story of humanity. And what Elisabeth said is like, there's something here all the time. We're just waking up to what indigenous wisdom has already known. So let me turn to Jean and John, and they've been founders of this Synergy Circle. And thank you for being here. So please share what you feel the narrative is here.
Sure. Well, the people who have spoken already have touched on this in very powerful ways, but I wanted to go back to basics for just a second to say, if we are going to influence the narrative of ETs and ultra-terrestrial beings and UAPs that is going on in the media, what we need to do first is expand, to push back against the limitations of what is commonly perceived as reality. Because reality, as each of our speakers have already touched on, is much, much, much larger than what we give it credit for. It's not confined by our current understanding of physics. It's not confined by the experiences of our 5 primary senses. It's not confined to a single universe. It's not confined to the dimension that we live in. So we first, I think, need to influence the discussion of other realities. And that's, if we talk about an awakening, that's one of the things that people are awakening to. So Jean and I, over the years with our contacts with indigenous cultures around the world and being in ceremonial spaces, have had many, many experiences of ultra-terrestrials and ETs. And so that's what we can draw on and bring to the discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also want to say thank you to Alan for leading this. You're doing a great job. And thank you, Desiree and JJ and Diane and all of you and everybody else that's here. Yeah, I have to admit that the one story that keeps coming to me, it's an old Cherokee legend, but it's gotten adopted by a number of different factions, is the story of the 2 wolves. And I know most of you know that story, but we've got the wolf that is coming from fear and anger, and we've got the wolf that's coming from compassion and wisdom. And as we're dealing with the present circumstances that we have right now, with around the whole phenomenon that is occurring at the moment, it's which of the wolves are you going to feed? Because we are already experiencing an enormous amount of fear that's being fed into the collective. And everybody that is on this call right now, I'll be brave enough to speak for you. I'm guessing that you are feeding the wolf of compassion and wisdom. And if we're going to change the narrative, this is the focus. This is the wolf we need to keep feeding. And hopefully we can help the other wolf transform in the process. I know that John and I, in all the work that we've been doing all these years, the one phrase that has stuck with us is, there is no separation, that separation is an illusion. And I think that this is one of the messages that we can really bring into the vocabulary that we use. Those that are coming from other systems, planetary systems, other dimensional systems, it doesn't matter, it's still part of us. And as Oscar is saying, this is a reflection of what's coming within us. And so all the work that John and I've been doing over all these years is focused on that. And we are now following the vision, as many of you know, and Juan Carlos may speak to this a little bit, is the creation of the Interstellar University vision, which is much bigger than a university, as you would think of it. This is actually a whole new way of being for the human species, to help sustain a higher level of consciousness and to help it move on out into the larger cosmic community as a mature and enlightened species. So this is where our focus is right now. And thank you for our time.
That is excellent. Everyone's added such a key element. I think what you said, Jean, and what Diane said in the beginning, that choice between fear and love. And this is why we need to sort of take the narrative away from the military, because as the Kabbalah says, you see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. And if we're depending on people who thinks their job is to defend and against the invaders, then that's the kind of narrative we're going to get, because that's what they see in the world: defense and fear and protection. And that's why I feel it's up to us to come forward with this sort of forum to put out something different, because there is something different. I think Mitchell said yesterday, what the Jung saying, is the universe a friendly place or not? And Albert Einstein. I thought it was Carl Jung, but it doesn't matter. But so this is it. How are we embracing something different than what the mainstream is telling us and dictating to us? So Desiree, why don't you do the next introduction?
Right. Thank you, Alan. So yeah, the best person coming up next will be Kurt, but I just want to say a few things about him. One, he's been mainstream, which is fabulous. He has a PhD in the standard science, but he's also done a lot of inner work in the Christian aspects of theology, and he's had unique experiences, which he said yesterday on the program he's starting to explain and come out with. So Kurt, will you take off with the next topic? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So as I said yesterday, and I'll be very brief, what's been driving the conversation that has brought us here to this brink of what could really be a revolution in consciousness for the world, as big as the Copernican revolution, is the hard data that's not deniable. Once you have the Navy, the Pentagon, the videos, the Raytheon displays, the statements by Obama and Radcliffe and Reid and Rubio, it suddenly gets into the public mind that this is true. This is actually a part of the actual reality. And that is where the implications come from. Now, as I said yesterday, my fear is, because you know as well as I do, we've had good data sets about this for decades. And yet they've always been marginalized, ignored, made fun of, whatever the case may be. So the question is whether this new data and the new attention to it will push that over the top, in the public mind. Now, the other thing I mentioned, that my fear is that if it gets tapped down by the mainstream, by the government, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others who are also tapping it down, it will go back to being a subcultural conversation, as it's been for decades, a conversation among a small minority of people that others will not pay attention to. So next to last point, which I made yesterday, science has been through this before. It went through this with plate tectonics. Today, everybody knows everything about plate tectonics. It's self-evident, we know it in detail. But back in the 1980s, it was completely denied and vehemently fought against by the major parts of the scientific establishment, particularly in biology. And it would have never gotten through the door if it hadn't have been proven by the hard data of geophysics. Now, that was a revolution because, face it, our understanding of the origin and fauna and flora is completely different if the continents moved or didn't move. So it was a big deal. But what happened is even though biology denied it until the end, all the big names at Harvard, you could not deny the data sets that came out of geophysics. Once those had to be listened to, then the data sets that had always been there, had been published in journals overseas and published in languages other than English, then everybody said, oh, this data was always there before. We're in the same situation now with the mainstream as we were then. So my hope is that there's enough momentum here relative to the reality of this, that it gets over the top in the public mind. I think the media's been doing a good job, because what the media's been doing is saying right up front, these are real, right up front, we don't know what they are, then showing the videos, then showing critical interviews. That goes into the public mind and is convincing as not deniable. So last thing I'll say is the type of thing that can happen with this, if we're not careful about what we put into the conversation, is this example with a really esteemed colleague in mainstream science who said to me, when Marianne Williamson was running for president. I was watching one of her speeches and I was really moved. And I really liked what she said. Oh my God. Then she said we could control hurricanes with our minds. And I just turned the TV off. So we have to be really, really careful about how we introduce this into the conversation. But my hope is that it will not be tapped down and not go back into a subcultural conversation where no one will pay attention to it, just like in the past.
Right.
I completely agree with Kurt's statement. We have to be social as well as spiritual navigators, because we're going to see an avalanche of information coming, not necessary for our government, but from world governments and researchers that we've been in contact with. Again, I want to emphasize, we not only have a smoking gun, but a smoking body. Right. And the information put out brought me into contact with the astronauts themselves, who explained their great difficulty in knowing that there are other advanced cosmologies and members of these cosmic civilizations on our doorstep. Nonetheless, we have to go ahead with this greater roadmap that has brought us all together as evolutionary leaders, thinkers, and synergists of the spirit and the scientific viewpoint.
And so now I'd like to go to Jude Currivan. She really has this background all the way from Oxford to Stonehenge. And with her new book on cosmology, she truly understands really what's taking place in the heavens. Jude, go ahead.
Thanks, Desiree. I'd like to add on what Jean said, I think. My sense is that I suspect our cosmic family, the question they'd ask us is, why did we buy into the illusion of materialism and separation? Why did we buy into it? And my sense is that the potential contacts happening now, because despite the appearance of turmoil, is because we are waking up. More and more of us are waking up to remember we are inseparable, and we're being seen to do that. And I think we're being supported in doing that, as Elisabeth said. So I think it's really amazing at the moment that at this point of crisis that I feel is a potential metamorphosis, that not only are we being contacted ever more overtly, and not only are we more and more opening a dialogue of communion and communication, but also we're having now the evidence across all fields of research and many, many scales of existence, that instead of a universe that is separate and material, our universe exists and evolves as a unified, multidimensional entity. And even more so, it has an innate impulse to evolve from simplicity to complexity. So we now have the scientific evidence to show not only that our universe is non-locally unified and multidimensional, but that mind and consciousness are primary. That mind and consciousness aren't something we have, they literally are what we and the whole world are. And that changes, transforms everything. Because it does seem to me that even with the data sets, there can be a cognitive dissonance unless there's a framework to set those data sets within. An authentic, a substantive, a comprehensive framework that's both scientifically based, but also converges, as Oscar said, with indigenous wisdom, with ancient wisdom, with spiritual experiences. And that, I feel, is what we now have. We have this confluence, this convergence of both experiential and data sets, but we're also now have an emergent whole world view framework that says also that everything in existence has meaning and purpose. And I think that is key, because this is a science of consciousness. This is a science of love. And this is a science that shows that we all, and not just we, that our universe is a living, unified, evolving entity. Our planetary home Gaia is a living, evolving entity. We are their co-evolutionary partners. We are their microcosmic co-creators. If we can literally wake up to remember that, to remember that we have a cosmic destiny. And it seems to me that our cosmic families, our multidimensional families, our intraterrestrial, devic and elemental families, we have so much support in this waking up and growing up and linking up and lifting up to actually take forward our conscious evolution. And that's why I feel that all of these incredible confluences have come forward as opportunity to literally consciously evolve. And as our recent book as evolutionary leader said, this is our moment of choice. And I'm just delighted we're all coming together to make that choice together.
Well, excellent, Jude. I love what you said, and I love how you said it with that beautiful, soft English kind of Shakespearean language. It was beautiful, because I think this is the intelligent conversation we need to have together, because you are a scientist and there's many scientists here. So it's integrating all phases of human knowledge, including the indigenous, including the academic, including everything we can think, because this, as Kurt said, this is a seed change. This is a transformational point in human history. So I want to call on my friend, my good friend, Mitchell Rabin, who's been studying a better world, how to create a better world for a long, long time. And he's inspired me to do my thing. So thanks, Mitchell, for being here, and add to what we're seeing, that's gone on, and kind of pull it together in your great, better world way.
Thank you so much, Alan. And I feel such agreement, and not just agreement, but alignment with all of my dear friends and colleagues here. And it's really, truly uplifting and a joy to be here with everybody. I'd like to look at this from the point of view for a moment, if you will, because of my background in psychology and parapsychology to varying extents. From the point of view of identity, we have the hard data sets, as Kurt was describing. We have all of that factual, photographic, real video information, which is fantastic. And as Jude mentioned, there is cognitive dissonance. We could be looking at something and still not believe it. And as we know from our other dear friend, cellular biologist Bruce Lipton, that our entire perceptual world is influenced by our belief systems, not by reality. So that's a whole other conversation. But I'd sort of like to start here with dessert, if you wouldn't mind. And what I mean by that is that you could say that from the point of view of identity, we are going from egocentric to ecocentric to universal centric. And this is one of the opportunities that, Alan, you keep referring to in your work, that this is a moment, this is an opportunity for us all to grow in our sense of identity, and to come out of our smaller world and go from the micro into the macro, to go to those finer keys in Elisabeth's large piano, where we tune into the higher Vedic resonances. And while we don't know really at all what's next, and that's part of the excitement here, I think that it's fair to say that whatever happens next is going to be a rather radical expansion of ourselves. And I think we ought to be sort of mentally and spiritually and emotionally prepared for that in an open-hearted, big-minded way. Yesterday, I referred to Thomas A. Kuhn's book, The Structure of
Scientific Revolution.
Right, Scientific Revolutions, thank you. And the reason I did that is because this is so precipitous, what is before us, and very exciting at that. So if we look at such a sea change, such a perceptual shift in our understanding of reality, which is before us, that even if, let's just say, our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters come on and they know English and they sing the way we do and make jokes the way we do and everything else, even if that's the case, the mental preparation we will have done for having to possibly learn Pleiadian or Andromedan and to expand ourselves into an entirely different sense of self to communicate, it will still have been worth it just to have that inner experience of our own. Let's just say this is really what human potential is about. Human potential isn't about memorizing a few more facts, but rather to expand our neural network to go so far as to literally, being the antenna that they are, receive and communicate with, listen to the frequencies that are out there that will become our new larger sense of family. So
Right, beautiful, Mitchell. That does add another element to the conversation. I just want to mention Daniel Bauer's comment. I think, you know, it sort of comes down to, this is not exactly what he says, but it's in the chat. If we don't pay attention to the earth, we're not going to have a platform to meet any other beings. Like, this is part of the conversation, how we've treated the earth, which is ourselves, and this idea that it's a throwaway culture, and we are in a very serious place. And that's one of the reasons I think who's ever out there is just saying, clean up your mess first before we visit. It's like, clean your house before you got company, you know, it's like that. And so
very true.
That is a big part of the world we are facing. A new heaven and a new earth is what I say. So and those are the two subjects that really bring our world together. The fact that we're part of a greater cosmos, the fact that we share a planet. So wait, Desiree, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect for our last speaker of the official panelist here. And that is Juan Carlos Kaitan, because he is a social architect, but he's gone all over the world. I know he's been in Egypt. He lives currently in Mexico, although he's visiting Hawaii, but that just shows you what he's done. And yes, I mean, almost all the extraterrestrial contact on the higher levels have all said, you know, take care of the planet. It's critical. And also take care, as Diane said, of the unity spirit that we have to say. I mean, back in December, there was something from the someone connected with the Israeli program on space security. And he said, the ETs don't think we're ready for higher contact. And a lot of it is our consciousness that needs to shift. And hopefully we're doing that right now. That's what's important. But ultimately, I know Juan Carlos has a lot to tell us. So go ahead, Juan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Very inspired with everything you are saying. And that's totally right. Since I was very young, I was very interested in the topic. And by the age of, I will say 21, I got to my full research that, okay, they are here. They have been talking to us for many hundreds or thousands of years. So what is the message? And the message was exactly that. We are waiting for you. We're assisting you to reach higher levels of consciousness so we can communicate with you. So they have been communicating with many people, yet we are in the moment in which I will say that we have 10 years for the big shared contact. And I say that because we are in the final exam. This is graduation time. And I call this the planetary party. This is the party where we all come together as a unified humanity with a unified voice, and we can say we are ready. Yet, what does it mean to be ready? Because that's been the constant message they've been sharing is clean your house, be ready, learn to get along, use your technology for the betterment of humanity. And we are in the threshold at this moment of whether we are going to go into a transhumanistic society or, as Jude Currivan calls it, a suprahumanistic society. Are we developing the intel inside? Are we using the technology to expand consciousness? And I remember in one conversation with Jude a long time ago, if we had a question to them, what we will ask them in this very critical moment for humanity. And the question is, how did you guys made it? Because we are at the moment with the technology we have, in Spanish we say ciencia, sin conciencia, like science without consciousness, is a very dangerous moment. The bigger the gap, the bigger the time for destruction. So we need to really bring a planetary consciousness in order to get to the level of shared contact. So I will just say, in the next 10 years, we need to reach first planetary consciousness. Once we act with bioregional understanding, collectively together, thinking as global citizens, then our next evolutionary step will be universal citizens. Homo universalis. So we are transitioning from Homo sapiens to Homo universalis. And I think at the moment, rather than thinking, how do we get in touch with them? We need to be ready ourselves. We need to answer that question of bringing greater consciousness collectively. And in that way, we will be able to, they will come down for the planet, for the prompt, for this planetary party. When we say we are declaring ourselves Homo planetaris and then Homo universalis.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I think we have to clean up the party we've already had, but no, I agree with you. And one thing Bruce Lipton says is that we need to come together as a single consciousness before we meet other single consciousnesses, and that includes the world, these earth bodies, the earth itself. So just to finish up this discussion, I'm calling James O'D, who was very active before in planning this whole thing. So James, we'd all love to hear what you have to say as a contribution to this ongoing discussion. So,
or to start with a question for our panel, that would be great too.
Oh, okay. You say just start with the question, throw out the question, then James could come on.
James was organizing some of the questions he thought should be asked. Yeah.
Right, but the question I think we should ask then, and James could come in first, is like, how do we go into the unknown? I mean, we've all laid out a lot of narratives and I resonate with all of them, but how do we, and I don't know if there is an answer for this, but it just keeps coming to me. I also want to include like Kurt's comment that we do not want this to get away from us, the people. We want to go forward in somehow a people's movement that will respect the earth and respect the cosmology we're a part of. But, you know, and if it goes into a subcultural phenomenon, go back to like the movies and the sci-fi, then we will have lost our moment of choice, which is to take charge of the situation. So, but the big question I have is, how do we move away or go beyond all the narratives that we have put out here and walk into something unknown? Because I think what is so stimulating about this time in history, it represents an unknown factor. That includes people's fear. People are always only afraid of what they know, so they're projecting what they know onto the unknown. But I think the unknown is full of wonder, possibility, and huge potential. So, James, if you have any idea from your perspective of the way to take everything that's being said and enter something that has yet to unfold, if that's clear, if I'm making sense. Do you know what I mean? James, you can unmute yourself if you want to answer that, if you want to take a stab. This is the dialogue part. So everyone can add to that as we build a kind of field. And you know, you could throw out something else that will take us in a thread in a sort of other way, but let's mold a new future that may not have been formulated yet. That's my idea for this conversation. So James, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm in total awe at what has been shared so far. The wisdom, the love, and I think the fundamental question is, oh, my beloveds in the universe, how are we related? How are we related? You know, mitaque oiasin, we are all connected, we are all related. And there are no aims, there are no others. So that sense of discovery, as has been so profoundly shared this morning, within us, how are we putting together that sense of wholeness and unity? So
right.
Here we go into a conversation where we meet our long lost relatives, i.e. the long lost parts of ourselves or the evolving parts of ourselves.
Beautiful. I mean, that is the resonance that I think all of us feel. This is part of ourselves that has remained unknown. So someone mentioned synergy. How do we form a conscious synergy also to meet these others on a new playing field? This is part, if we can formulate this somehow, this could be a narrative that we take out to the world. And Desiree, you have any?
Yeah, well, let me just start the conversation, because this is a source of synergy circle, so to speak. And yeah, how do we do that? Well, it's true, and it says in your book that it's all about consciousness, and that the ETs, the UTs, and even the extracelestials are all linking to our consciousness. And that is why some people have negative experiences with them, because they're linking to the negative, we'll say, that's in quotes, ETs that are out to kind of get them. But all of us really need to call upon the highest sources of energy and bring those into our consciousness. And then they actually help to guide us, and we can then help to help the planet. And I think that's really what we're talking about when we get into this great awakening, this greater homo universalis and divine connection. So can we pick it up from there? How do we keep that connection going?
One more thing, though, I want to add is, how do we walk into the unknown? Because that is what's so exciting about this topic. It is unknown in the sense. And how do we prepare for something we don't know? How do we awaken? Go ahead.
But I was going to say, it's not unknown to many of us. It's a matter of keeping the connection. So any of those topics, let's go on to who. Can you raise your hand or just unmute yourself and begin? How would you like?
On people, I think Elisabeth, you looked like you had something you wanted to say about all that, or do you want us to come back to you? Go ahead, Elisabeth. Wait, on.
No, not at the moment, Alan, but
all right.
Feel free to call on me.
Wait, who else raised? Was
Mitchell?
That?
Mitchell had a.
Okay, yes, Mitchell.
Alan and Desiree, if I could, I'd like to just respond to something that Daniel had said that you were reading, Alan, about, our Earth. It's so funny. I am such a deep lover of Pachamama, of Gaia, that I've been spending more time lately, well, for years, paying attention to the larger universal reality, that I sometimes feel like I'm cheating on Mother Earth by not paying as much attention to her as I should, and which I am paying a lot of attention. But the way I kind of see it in the larger context is that this is going to be a relationship of reciprocity. And over the years, in my understanding, usually through channeled information or psychic style received information about what they're interested in us, is our sense of love and our emotional lives, our emotional intelligence. And that's something that, while it's almost like Atlantis and Lemuria, if you don't mind my going that far out. And so one was highly technical and very cerebral and intellectual. The other one is a water culture, and that was very emotional, if you will. And so the ET phenomenon, as I have understood it over the years, is more like the Atlantean. And so when they come to see us and what it would be like to visit Earth, it would be for our, how do I say, emotionality. I mean, after all, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that we're more emotional than we are rational, God knows. So this is a feed into us that they will get. And what we in turn can possibly get is how to be more rational and how to deal with Mother Earth and get ourselves out of this horrific global warming scenario, and how to treat each other in a more rational, loving way.
Thank you, Mitchell. Okay, I'll call on Frank and then Juan Carlos. So go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, Suzanne had her hand up.
Oh, Suzanne too? Where I didn't see her hand. Well, we can go Frank and then Suzanne, then Juan Carlos, okay? And then, okay.
Also, Christy had her hand up.
Okay, well, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Alan. I've been interested in ETs for 30 years, so it's really wonderful to join this group of like-minded experts and people. One of the questions was, how do we move forward? And I think we can get guidance from that, from the ETs. In the 1990s, I went to these ET channeling sessions from a being called Elon from Essassani, and I was open-minded, and I heard some of the wisest things I'd ever heard at that point. Diane talked about telepathy. He said they, at a more evolved level, they communicate by means they call telepathy, because they know that they're one. They love loving others is like loving themselves. So we, with our fear and senses of isolation, put up psychic barriers so we're not telepathic, but the mechanism is telepathy. And I feel I've been in touch with him for 30 years as a friend through that mechanism. He said many, many things, building on what was said here, like they won't approach us as saviors, they'll approach us as friends and equals. Alan talked about evolving our society, fixing the earth. I think one of the main things is the way we treat animals. We torture and kill food animals and then consume the victims of our torture. It's kind of barbaric. We probably need to straighten that part out. He also said that they are in some ways a future version of us. They're a genetic mix of human and other DNA, not really in our future. They're in a parallel universe. He also said that in terms of the abduction or people who were abused, that's impossible because we have free will. So that if people who feel like they've been abducted could recognize on some level they agreed to that, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. There's also, I agree with what Kurt Johnson said about coming up with the right language to get this out to the mainstream. Maybe that wouldn't include all the stuff I just said. But in terms of getting knowledge from the ETs, there's over 100, I believe, Elon tapes available for free download from the website, the number 4shared.com. It's just really beautiful stuff. And he's addressed so many of these things we've discussed here, and we can get the knowledge right from the source. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, there's a chapter on telepathy in my book by Darryl Anka. So let me just thanks for that, Frank. Let me call on Suzanne Taylor. She had her hand up. Thank you, Suzanne, for being here.
Hi, Alan. Lots of other old friends here. Hello, all. My interest always is in how can we shift our worldview to where we care about each other as much as we care about ourselves. That's the essential move we have to make. And I tuned into the crop circles some decades ago, and we really missed the boat on. Nobody's mentioned this. I know lots of you are into it also, but we missed the boat on that one. You still can't explain a lot of what went on, although there's always been a hoaxing element, but you cannot explain some of what happened, even though now it's kind of been dismissed. But and I think now it should be dismissed in terms of what's going on now. I think it's all human made now. And, I put a little note in the chat, and I'm going to actually repeat it here because it's.
You muted yourself, Suzanne. Oh, unmute. You just muted yourself.
I'll unmute her.
Okay.
Here. Anyway, I reposted my note about my crop circle documentary, which, I think is pretty convincing that something astonishing was going on. But, every 100 years or so, for the last several hundred years, there have been little indications in the literature of the day, pamphlets, then, whatever early literature was, that the crop circles, something's going on. And then there wasn't any more attention. And they went, passed by another 100 years, another little blip. And this time, this last episode is the first time it landed and stayed, and there was a lot of interest. But just as human beings have a proclivity for conflict, the world over there in England, where it was focused, got so contentious and so ugly and so underhanded. And I think that whatever was real, that was trying to help us, that was trying to say, hello, if you accept the fact that we are another intelligence, your world will change, just like Galileo and Copernicus changed the cosmic order. Well, this would change the cosmic order again. And they just kept giving us these gifts. Some of the analysis, like Michael Glickman's analysis of them, is just brilliant. But again, the human element came in and messed it all up.
This is what we're fighting with, the human element. And yes, Suzanne's documentary, What on Earth, is a beautiful portrayal of what communication looks like. Suzanne, thanks for joining us. I didn't recognize you with the white hair.
Haven't seen you for a while, Alan. It's good to see you. Good to see a lot of old friends here.
Let me call on Juan Carlos, then Christine, and then Kurt I'd like to talk to. Oh, go ahead, Juan Carlos. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you. Just something briefly to share is that I think right now, the most important piece is that we can come up with a unified narrative of the new news, of how it is that we can, how we made it. We need to create a story, a new story in which we believe how we can make it forward. And at the same time, it is about the education. We're working with Interstellar University. It's not only just the fact that we need to start believing we can make it through the next stage and work together towards that. Something we call this the network of networks. And that was something given to me on Dreams. I don't know exactly the source, but it was very clearly stated. The only force that can move us forward is the network of networks. That is Gaia's immunity system. We need to awaken to our neuronal systems, the global brain, the global heart. And that's how I believe we can make it through.
Yeah, I think that's a good thread to pick up on. How do we move forward from this point? And if people can sort of talk to that, then maybe we can build a momentum in this dialogue. So is that good for you, Christine? Can you talk to that point?
Definitely. I was born with my intuitive abilities already awakened. I've had many contacts with extraterrestrials, recently as 3 days ago. And I'm associated with the Interstellar University. I'm on their board, and I've been studying with the Academy of Science for over 15 years. And the key here into going into the unknown is to develop our inner abilities that we all have for the telepathy, for the contact, for not only the telepathy, but also I have the clairvoyance where I can see the beings, can see the orbs. And it's time for us to get into that level where if you have these abilities, you have to raise your consciousness to be able to use your abilities. And that is how we go into the unknown.
Thank you. That's great based on experience. And the other woman, Christine, who has also raised her hand, please jump in.
And also Alan Karen Noe has a lot of experience with this too.
Okay, and then we'll go, and then I want to get what Kurt's notes said, because I think that's a key point, but go ahead, Christine.
Hello, everybody. I just want to briefly speak to something I think is very important. It has to do with, it was a comment made, a question about other beings asking why we bought into materialism and all this stuff. And I feel like they know how we got here. I feel it's really important that we don't guilt ourselves about what's going on with the earth. We all, I don't think there's anybody here, I am speaking for us, that doesn't love the earth and feel connected to her and feel torn up every time we use plastic or fly on an airplane. I think that guilt brings our frequency discordant with what we want to create. It's more powerful. I mean, you know, I can recycle. It's important. I vote with my dollar, don't eat meat, but all that is, you know, finding out China's not buying our recyclables anymore. You know, it's not nearly as powerful as something that Jean White Eagle refers to as clearing the hollow bone. How can I get myself clear enough so that the light that's coming and all the assistance and all the love from all these beings for us to come down into earth? I feel like Gaia knows our names. She's brought us together. They're not wondering why we're still using plastic. I just think that's important.
Thank you.
And to, as being said, work on our abilities to be able to communicate with them. So I just wanted to bring that up because I feel loving ourselves and our own heart is what's going to bring us closer to dialogue and other people around me to even listen to what I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. These are the strategies that I like hearing because it moves the ball down the field, as Grant Cameron would say. So it helps us move forward. Thank you, Christine. Who had there? Oh, Karen wanted to say something, and then John and Jean. Thank you. Karen, Noe.
And Kurt. Yeah.
And Kurt, yes, of course. Yes. Karen, you're unmuted. Unmute yourself, Karen. Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes, you can see and hear. Yes.
So I am not a scientist. I'm a psychic medium, and I've written several books. My latest one is called We Consciousness. And the most important concept is that we are all one. And that oneness includes, all of humanity, all animals, and those in higher dimensions, deceased loved ones, angels. My purpose here on earth is not to tell people what I can do, but to empower all of everyone to do what I do. And the most important thing we could do is to raise our vibration so it's more on par with the energy of the higher dimensions, which includes daily meditation, forgiveness, understanding our oneness, that we truly are all one. And whatever we do to ourselves or another, it affects everyone. And when we truly get that, all of us, not just me, not just several, the people who are telepathic or able to, we all will be able to do this. And when we raise the vibration of our planet, that's when we'll all know that we're not alone. And they're not aliens. They've been here before we were.
Thank you. That is great. And you know that from a psychic kind of intuitive.
Without a doubt. And my wish is for everyone to know this without a doubt too.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Great to see you again. And John and Jean, yes, please jump in. Unmute one more time. Yes.
Kurt, I think you were going to say something and then we can say something.
Okay, yeah, Kurt put an interesting note in the chat there. And Kurt, do you want to explain it in terms, because people watching can't see the chat?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what I said was
move forward though too, not just as,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the time of the plate tectonics debate, where major journals then had to apologize of why they ignored the data so long, why they wouldn't publish it, because it had then been proven by geophysics. So David Hull, who's one of the great philosophers of science, he wrote a paper that's very famous about how does this happen? How does the data get ignored? And he identified steps that are taken by those who authentically believe the other is true. They may not be coming from malevolence. They truly believe it's the opposite that's true. So they want to defend that. So the first thing is you obfuscate. Now, James Clapper, who's the former CIA director, said probably the June 25th report will do that. It will be ambiguous.
What does obfuscate mean?
Blow smoke. Blow smoke. In other words, make something so blurry that people can't follow the credible evidence. So blow smoke, obfuscate. So James Clapper said most likely the June 25th report will say something because the cat's out of the bag, but it will be ambiguous so that people can work with it to spin the narrative the way that they want to do it. So that's the first step, tap something down, blow smoke, obfuscate. Second one is create a straw man, create an alternate explanation or an alternate data set. Trump's been a genius at it. We see how it works. So those who want to spin this the other way, even though the cat's out of the bag with all this data, that's what they're going to do relative to the second step. And then the third step, of course, is you attack your enemies personally, tell them that they beat their wives, that they actually, are embezzlers, whatever the case may be. That's the third step. But David Hull said this is actually what had happened in the plate tectonics discussion and had held the data up for, 10, 20, 30 years.
So how do we move forward then, Kurt? How do we move out of that obfuscation?
Well, we have to do our part, but we also have to realize that to the extent that we're a subculture, the odds are against us in a way that will be listened to unless those big voices, the biggest voice is the hard data that the objective mind, the trained materialistic mind can't deny. That's the biggest one. But when you've got people like Obama and Reid and Radcliffe and Clapper, and once you've got those voices, you can't get rid of those. So it's just going to be very interesting to see which ways this goes. Will it be tapped down, or will it cat come more out of the bag? So, I think we're going to find out.
If you have any ideas, we'll get to Jean, what we can do.
Right. So let me just add to that, Alan. Well, from what has been released to date, and these are some, leaks of what the House of Representatives and the Senate has seen, it doesn't look like it's doing much more than what Kurt described, blowing smoke. But we still have a few days to go. There's still a lot of powerful voices. So let's really put some positive energy into saying, something more positive. Whatever you want to see come out of the government, let's at least spend the next 3 days putting that energy, or even 2 days. I think it's the 23rd, so 2 more days. Put positive energy to Washington, see even UFOs over the White House once again, or over the Congress building, and let's really put some energy out. Maybe we can shift it, even on a subconscious level, because it all works. One UFO sighting around this time is going to make a real difference. So let's hope something different can change.
Me and Desiree and JJ are working with Mark Sims, who's starting a people's movement. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But John and Jean, please.
Yeah, actually, this is, I'm unmuted.
You're on.
Yeah, so where do we go? It's kind of tapping into something Christina heard you say, but it's also tapping into everything else I'm hearing everyone else now say, Kurt and Desiree and everything. Where do we go from here? How do we get from here to there? Let's make hopefully the real assumption, the knowing that there is no separation. We really are connected to each other. So the decisions that each one of us makes in our individual lives, what you eat, how you act, how you respond to another person, anything that is stuck inside. Christine mentioned the hollow bone. We keep saying, keep clearing the hollow bone every single day. Keep clearing yourself, because that will give you a clear view as to the next step that you as an individual can take, and that affects the entire collective. And if enough of us can do this, we shift the frequency for the entire species.
I think so. Yes. Thank you. That is excellent. Okay, we'll go back to Christine for a second because she had her hand up. Or is that the same hand as you had before up?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Mitchell. Yes, I was thinking of you, Mitchell, because you end all your emails with that famous Margaret Mead quote. Can you just share that for a second?
Yeah, sure. Well, there are a couple of them, Alan. You're absolutely right. The one of Margaret Mead is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has.
Yes, that brings tears to my eyes. So thank you.
Now changing the cosmos, right?
Alan, is very important that I actually have here is you never change things by Bucky Fuller, by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the current one obsolete.
This is why we're gathered here today.
Exactly.
And
I'd love to follow up, if I may just take a moment on what Desiree was saying, Kurt and Jean, because it's so right on. On one hand, petitioning internally to raise the vibration and have the intent of what we want to be the desired outcome is utterly important. Jean, I love, what you were saying, but I also want to say there's also a value in actually taking your hand and writing a letter. I am famous for writing letters to Congress, to governors, to mayors, and actually voicing, because for every single letter they receive, they think that represents the way they compute it. It's worth about a couple of thousand letters from their constituents. So I'm all for the prayer and all for the intent, and the intent to also write the physical letter work it on a material level as well.
Well, maybe send something to Marco Rubio in the next 24 hours, anyone who wants to be active politically, because he was the one that initiated this. Hopefully he can push this forward. Alan, with his new book, Making Contact, I think made a big step. It was just released really about a little bit more than a month ago, and it's making a statement all over Amazon. But Alan, maybe you could do a visualization on getting, a change in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, all of us can jump in. Is anyone, because do we have to wrap up, Diane?
Yeah, we will have to wrap up in 3 minutes. I see Sue has her hand up, so I don't know if that could be the last.
Who had her hand up, you said?
Sue.
Oh, go ahead, Sue, and then we'll do a little wrap up and just.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to tell everyone how wonderful this is and all the voices in here, and also to kind of suggest something that I discovered when I was talking about some of this to some high school students. And I said to them, have you had any of these unusual experiences yourself? Seen dead people, seen, contact, whatever it is. And I said, I want you to know this is absolutely real. So it said, it's like, let's define a new normal. Let's define normal as having these experiences. It's not normal not to have them.
Thank you.
So the real quality of humanity is including all of this spectrum that we've been talking about, all of this range of consciousness. And to be cut off from that is not normal, and it's making us crazy, and it's making us kill our world. So let's redefine normal as everything we've been talking about and all the qualities of humanity we've been talking about. That's normal.
Great. No, that's a great way to kind of, I won't say end this dialogue, but begin this dialogue in a way, because it's like we have to all drop in. So let's just close our eyes, and Desiree, maybe you could join in this meditation, but just close your eyes and know who each of us are, represent thousands and thousands of people that we can influence and connect with, and take in all the wisdom we've heard today from people who've dedicated their lives to this evolutionary moment.
Right, and connect with your star people in the heavens and bring them down to earth to be seen by all, even those in Washington, those in Russia, those in China, those all over the world.
And open your heart now with those eyes closed out to the cosmos as love, as we send love out there, as that love is received by us. And let's start making contact with this love connection, this emanation of what the human spirit is as it meets the others, waiting for us to wake up. Just take that in for a moment. Breathe. Thank you.
And we want to thank Lauren Singer for helping us out here, and also Diane Williams and Source of Synergy and Evolutionary Leaders, and all the panelists who shared today.
I just want to say
Thank you, Desiree and Alan, for hosting us, and everybody. It's been a phenomenal dialogue.
And it's been so rich, because each of us know this is a moment of choice. This is the edge of history that we are approaching, a new threshold of possibility. And it's probably the most exciting time I think we've had on Earth, where we're waking up to something bigger, greater, and more possible for the human race. So
very true. Well put, Alan.
Blessings to everyone. And this is
Desiree. Thank you, Alan.
This is the beginning, and with Diana, Source of Synergy, we're going to be having at least once a month, right, Diana, a synergy circle.
Yes.
To this sort of discussion, as we kind of come together and start to really formulate what we can do. And I also said Mark Sims, and I'll send everyone an email about what Mark Sims is doing with Danny Sheehan, who's Louise Alexander's lawyer, and forming a people's movement for this revelation of the greater mind.
And thanks to Deborah, who I see just popped on.
Deborah, and
she really did a lot to pull all of these programs together. So thank you,
and everyone, and unity. This is our week of cosmic unity.
And stay tuned for the next program on the Evolutionary Leaders channel here at World Unity Week.
And we don't have unity unless we unite with something even beyond this limited world. So thank you, Elisabeth and Claudia for being there, and everyone, Mitch, everyone who is taking this. Well, we're all taking it seriously, but it's such a key topic that we don't want to lose the ball. We want to keep running as we have this momentum. Suzanne Taylor for all your work and everyone. So Alan Steinfeld for New Realities.
And evolutionary leaders.
Let's start.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Diane. And
Love you all.
I don't want
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.